Hi, I'm talking with Shaznay, who is writing a trilogy called Oslac's Odyssey, and her first book is called Entrampment at Estragar. So Shaz, why do you write?
I always have. I started writing, I can remember giving my mother samples of my writing before I was 10 years old.
Okay.
And I couldn't help myself. I'd see something, a film or something, and I loved it, but I felt like it needed something. There was a scene missing.
Yeah.
I didn't realise at 9, 10, 11 years old that I was actually writing fan fiction. It didn't exist in 1976, but that's what I was doing. And then in later years, as I was dealing with things when things weren't working, one of the things I did was just lose myself in writing.
Mm-hmm.
So in the absence of a time machine, I was sort of putting things straight,
Mm-hmm.
at least so I could process things that were happening to me. And actually it's harder for me not to write. It's one of those things where as soon as I need to do something, I need to get something out of my system, it used to be on a typewriter, and I would sit up and beg Remington. I did try handwriting, but I'm a doctor. My handwriting is illegible even to me.
I think anybody that's gone to university,
Yeah, you just end up with a
just
scrawl.
gone.
So I learned how to type very, very early. And I did actually attend a class, secretarial class, when I was at school. I did Pitman and I did typing. I wasn't any good at either of them, but I did do it. But as soon as I mastered typewriting, and on a Remington you learn quite fast, because if you miss the keys and your finger goes between them, you lose the skin. So you get quite accurate quite quickly.
Oh, I've been there as well.
Yeah.
How do you write?
Well, I don't plot as such. In fact, most of the things that I've written over the years had no idea where they were going. And Oslac's Odyssey is the first time where the entire plot came to me in one hit.
And how did that happen?
I was stuck in a traffic jam on the M25 of driving home from work. And I think there'd been some terrible accident, because I remember seeing an air ambulance and all that. So, engines off, it's boiling hot. I've had a very long day at work. My car radio had shorted, so I didn't have any music or anything to listen to. And I was staring at the tarmac, and suddenly this idea just popped into my head.
Okay.
From literally nowhere. And I'm mulling it over, and I think I must have been sitting there for over an hour just thinking about it. And then over the next week or so, I found myself adding to it because it's a 2-hour drive from Guildford to Henley, and that's if the traffic's moderately with you.
Moderately. We
Moderately.
are talking the M25.
Yeah, and especially coming home in the evenings. You leave at 4:00, and I'd be lucky if I got home by 7:30, 8:00 at night.
Should we explain the M25 to Americans?
If they've watched Good Omens, they already know. The invention of the devil. It's a car park, basically, that surrounds London.
Disguised as a motorway.
Disguised as a motorway, yes. You spend a lot of time on a so-called 70-mile-an-hour motorway doing about 20.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, yeah. So, I bit by bit, more and more came to me. And I remember I was driving, I think I was driving in, actually, because suddenly this thing came into my head, and I went, oh wow, that's brilliant. And I remember getting in, and I was so full of this story. I'm trying to teach sociology, and this story's pounding in my head. And I went over to see my friend Adam, and said, I've got to tell somebody, I have got to tell someone, but you can't tell anybody else. And he's like, okay. And so I told him this plot, the first person to be told. And I remember him sitting there, and as I explained what was going to happen, he just looked at me and he went, which was a good reaction, I thought, and boded well. But normally, as I say, it's not exactly plotting. I mean, that's the whole thread's there. I know exactly where it's going. It's been going there literally from chapter 1.
Spoiler alert, so do I.
Yes, because he had to know so that he could create the cover. Because otherwise the cover wouldn't have all the hints in it that it has. Because actually the whole story is in the cover, if you know what you're looking for. So although I know the plot of the trilogy, the individual stories are unfolding as I am writing them. And characters are appearing from nowhere. So I've just finished a chapter and I not only got 2 characters I didn't know what they were or how they interacted. I got a plot I wasn't expecting. I got hints for the future. I know that they have to be in there, but I don't know how they're going to go in there. And then suddenly something will happen and I go, oh, that's cool. So my brain is kind of putting it all in there.
Because I know the ending. It's a bit weird because when I'm reading it, I'm reading it for the first and the second time.
Well, obviously the bits that you don't know beyond the main outline are completely new to you. And I remember you reading that last chapter and going, let's just get into the good bit, which is, love it when you say that. Yeah, so it's a decent sized book. I mean, it's it's 350 pages. It's not a pamphlet. So this is, and each of them is about the same.
8 chapters,
and they're always 8 chapters. There is a reason for that. Now, do I mention what the reason is? I wonder.
No.
Okay.
No.
But yeah, there's a pattern going on here. I don't like stuff that's too lightweight. You know, I can read the papers if I want that. I like stuff that's got some plot, some depth, something where I can dig. I hate novels that assume I'm an idiot. I like novels that say I am gonna ask you come up to my level. I like novels that have more than one level to them. So this book was written, or this trilogy is written on multiple levels. So you can read it as a straight adventure story.
You're writing for my mum.
Oh,
Basically.
I'm glad to hear it. I'm hoping there are millions of people like your mum.
You see, my mum has read a little-known series called Harry Potter, and which she has read and reread and reread. So, yeah.
Well, there's even more levels in Oslac's Odyssey because you've got, as I say, you've got a straight adventure. That's fine. And it's not just one adventure. There's lots of different adventures. So you've got time travel, you've got fantasy, you've got dragons, you've got robots, you've got real science, you've got flat Earth. You pain. You've got all these different things in there. But on top of that, you've got an underlying mystery. You've got carefully researched history. You've got philosophy, ethics, metaphysics. There's so many different things going on. And as I say, even the cover is giving you a whole load of hints buried within it, if you know what you're looking for, what the hints are. So I wanted this to be something where people could get to the end and then when they finished it and realised everything that was happening, they could go right back to the beginning and reread it and realise that even in the very first chapter, you're being told what's going on.
So what software do you use?
So First Draft is always in OpenOffice. Once it's gone through and I've finished the first chapter, or finished that chapter, and gone through it and edited it and tweaked it, and I lose count of how many times I go over it. And then it's converted to Word. It's imported into Word, doesn't need conversion. At which point it usually grows about 5 pages. And then I go through it again because now it's in a different software. It looks slightly different. I spot errors. When you've seen it looking the same over and over and over again, you can miss silly mistakes like repeated words or it's when it should have said it, or I've missed out a significant word like not, which makes a bit of a difference. But so I see it then it goes out to my beta readers, and they take a look and see if they can spot anything. And then it comes back with their comments and it gets another edit. Once I've got all of the chapters for the book together, so I've written them chapter by chapter, edited chapter by chapter. Once all of them go together, I now edit the whole book. So I'm going through, and now I'm looking back at the previous books and making sure that all loose ends are tied up, all connections are made. A friend of mine, Sean, put me onto a group called Punk Publishers, who are awesome, fantastic guys. And they created a word, a .doc, unfortunately, not a docx, and I'm terrified of changing it for fear of how it can reformat and muck it around, so I'm leaving it alone. But they did this fantastic template, already laid out, pig to use to start with. If you delete a page by mistake, it completely throws everything out and destroys it. So
I was there when it happened. It was ugly.
It was very ugly. But once you suss it, it's an awesome template, and it is what this was done with. And free. Thank you guys, you're wonderful.
Oh, and the other thing was they also gave a PSD for the cover. So, which also gave spaces where the ISBN number goes.
They're great.
Yeah, so even the template for the front cover was free as well.
Yep, from Punk Publishing. Can't recommend those guys too much. The book is worth buying because they're so
Punk Publishers book.
Punk Publishers, yeah. Well, my book's worth buying as well.
Yes.
But yeah, Punk Publishers. There are links, and we'll make sure.
I'll put a link here.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how it gets done. Once it's in that final template, that corrects the format and everything. Mind you, I then have to go through it because Word doesn't always correct inverted commas or quotes into smart quotes and smart commas. So I have to do a search and replace for all of them. I then have to go through, because sometimes parts of it are converted and other parts aren't, and I have to go through page by page and format it again using the style sheet. And this isn't a problem with the template, it's a problem with Word. With very large documents, things tend to get skipped somehow. I don't know how. But as long as you go through it, it does. Most of it is done, but you have to go through it to make sure it is all done.
Do you have a particular time of day to write?
It depends. Usually what happens is I get up, grab my morning cuppa, and the fatal thing is if I go onto Facebook or my email or something like that, because that's going to be goodness knows how much time spent answering and dealing with stuff, or just being endlessly distracted. If I've got my act into gear, then it will be when I first get up. The problem is that my internal chronometer is shot, is the only way of describing it. I will sleep however many hours. It doesn't matter what time of the day or night it is. So daylight doesn't actually affect me. Which means that if I go to bed at 5 o'clock in the morning, then I will get up 8 hours later, regardless. And that's when I will write. So it's not a particular time of day so much as a particular time in my cycle.
So you get your 8 hours sleep. It's just
whenever.
When?
Yeah. I do find, I must admit, I've always been a night owl, much to my mother's fury. I will typically start whenever it is I get up. But if I get an idea later in the day, then I'll go, ooh, that, yes, and that's it. I'll just get typing. So, I've already done my 500 whatever it is words. And the next thing I know, I've done another 1,500 because an idea entered my head and I daren't leave it.